Developments in the age of agentic AI have given rise to a plethora of vibe coding solutions and a multitude of applications and websites being generated and launched ever so quickly. But with the rise of vibe coding comes its inherent downside. Non engineers attempting to engineer without an understanding of engineering principles nor the relevant planning and architectural solutioning. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our listeners from wherever you are tuning in. Once again, I am Anne Chang, and welcome to the AIP podcast on behalf of the AI Partnerships Core. I read not too long ago that AI isn't building better code, but actually melting the layers and layers of architecture that has been built up through proper computer science. It is no wonder that while enterprises are embracing AI-ready transformation, digital engineering teams are barely picking up vibe coding in all its supposed glory. Well, my guest today, Ehsan Mirdamadi, has advised hundreds of startups in delivering their minimum viable product or MVP to enterprise grade solutions. He's now translated this capability to Codalio, an enterprise ready solution. Let's dive right in. Ehsan, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Ehsan, tell us your backstory. How did you go from academia to startups to AI product extraordinaire?
Of course. Well, I studied computer science back in 99 at York University in Toronto. And same year, I started my very first company, which was cloud computing before even the term cloud computing existed. And I got lucky being able to just bootstrap the company and grow it to about 100,000 clients in a span of about 14 years. We were amongst the very few Canadian cloud computing providers, and so we had the opportunity to actually go after a lot of the government contracts, a lot of um, opportunities that required the sovereign host of applications and infrastructure. And I eventually, again, fortunate enough that I was able to sell the company, exit. And one of the things that really bothered me, or maybe say just kept me occupied mentally, was that how come on earth we started a lot of the great innovation in Canada, but we are not able to make them globally scalable type of platforms or businesses. And so to find that answer, I moved to California for about a couple of years, wanted to experience the whole startup ecosystem and the mindset firsthand. And I ended up spending some time with some researchers at Stanford University, and I helped them out and led the whole commercialization activities for DNA sequencing technology. Again, it was a successful journey and ride. And after that, learning if many great things from that ecosystem, I came back to Canada and started coaching, advising, investing in many companies, especially with the deep tech or strong technology at core environments. And so through that experience and engaging myself with a lot of the interesting startup hotspots in southern Ontario, and at the incubators connected to the universities, specifically University of Waterloo, Toronto, Ryerson, and York and McMaster University, I was able to kind of get a better sense firsthand of how other entrepreneurs, or let's call them new entrepreneurs, um, were thinking about building things, doing things, scaling companies, and really bringing the deep tech mindset or engineering mindset into the market. Through some obviously support that they were getting from the ecosystem. Eventually, knowing what the where the gaps were, I started putting together a CTO fractional CTO service company that was helping and supporting a lot of these early stage companies throughout their journey, building products, getting into the market. Um, and then also created this early stage VC fund out of Waterloo that was supporting those companies going through that experience, that exercise. And so the main narrative in all of this, as I learned after better, was that we in Canada are investing about $52 billion in R&D, but only 1% of all of that research and innovation, coming out of it were being commercialized. So I wanted to do something about it. And having the engineering background myself, knowing what sort of struggles and challenges I had to go through, um, you know, really thought about doing something about it, and then ended up creating Codalio, that really is positioned to help the engineer, the entrepreneurs to get to the market a lot faster by building products more efficiently.
It's amazing. You know, startups unfortunately have had their odds stacked against them, particularly in getting into enterprise customers and building their products to be adopted by much larger companies. How does Codalio help to bridge this gap?
Of course. Well, throughout my experience, as I described, dealing, engaging, interacting with a lot of strong companies in our ecosystem, what I realized was that good chunk of the early stage investment that they receive goes into the tech development, specifically MVP build. And so, in that exercise, in that process, um, you're dealing with challenges of on many levels, software development, figuring out what exactly to build and how to align with the problems and the challenges that we're seeing in the market for the target audience that we're going after. And so, even though many of those companies were very successful doing all of these things, at the end of the day, they were running out of capital so quickly before they could essentially start investing in market discovery and adoption, and essentially supporting and facilitating the early adoption. And so, um, again, looking at the nuances, looking at the situations that I had to deal with, the biggest challenge for them was obviously not knowing how the software was built properly. They teach you at school how to build, how to write good code, how to essentially think about the architectural considerations of a software, but they don't. What they don't teach you is that how to really build applications, which requires a lot of soft skills, a lot of understanding of how you essentially define a roadmap, define milestones, objectives, priorities for your software developers, for your engineers, but also how you bring them together and how you make sure you have a sound product MVP out the door more efficiently, more effectively. So what Codalio does is that not only it facilitates um, the whole elicitation of the ideas and the requirements from the minds of the founders, but also allows to go through a, let's say, AI augmented process that allows them to move things a lot faster, more efficiently, and more quickly in the age of AI. And so when you are reducing the cost of the building MVP by good 90%, that hopefully gives you enough breadth, enough resources to be able to really just compensate for the challenges that I just mentioned, which basically means that you can maybe double down on commercializing and marketing the product out into the market.
That's amazing. You know, I'm gonna skip ahead here. You know, I've heard Jensen Huang of NVIDIA. He famously mentioned that tomorrow's developers will not write a single line of code. What are your views on the need for systems thinking and actual computer engineering and writing code?
Of course. So the majority of the tools that you see out there into the market today are designed for the software developers. And in my view, they are most effective for the more senior software developers because your code is as good as your prompt. And if you do not have some level of seniority and expertise that helps you to build better prompts, good prompts that aligns with your business logic, aligns with the objective of the business, you're obviously not going to be able to get the outcome, the code that you will require, obviously for your play. And so, yes, AI is going to help you to just avoid writing the specifics of the code. But in my view, and I guess from the even the industry perspective today, um, it's just not there yet. You still need a layer that extracts the requirements, the business logic, the goals and the objectives of the target audience more efficiently and more effectively, because AI cannot be reading minds. And at the end of the day, if you are innovating, if you're building an MVP for something new, you're essentially inventing something that has never existed before. So AI wouldn't be able on its own to really bring about that sort of a comprehensiveness as you're building, architecting, and then writing your code and putting the software out there.
It's definitely true. But do you think, just one for the road, do you think that the reason why so many startups fail is really because of their inability to launch their product effectively? Because a lot of people say that startups tend to fail, or failure to launch is really because they've not really tested their hypothesis sufficiently with the right paying customers. Where do you see that balance between the product side and the commercialization side of things?
Well, we all know about the whole notion of the product development. And if you don't do the proper product development in your early days, which means if you're not thinking properly about whom you're targeting, where you're targeting, what sort of a pain points you're addressing, you're going to end up in a situation that you're building something that is not going to be used by anybody. And in this time and day, as things are moving a lot faster, if you're not quick enough to be able to really bring some of those ideas, that product thinking into the market, you may end up in a situation that by the time you get to the market, the needs and the mindset of the market has changed. So, in my view, um, yes, have the product development thinking early on. Make sure that you do understand what you're building, whom you're building it for, and what sort of a value propositions you're doubling down on, and make sure that you use these new AI tools, the new wave of AI tools, effectively to your best interest to move things a lot faster and to really um, try to build something very quickly, put in the hands of people, and validate your hypothesis as soon as possible, and go back and reiterate again faster.
That's brilliant. Well, Ehsan, it's been absolutely delightful having you on our show today. And for our audience, thank you for joining us. And once again, don't forget to like, share, and follow our podcast. You know how much that means to us. Once again, my guest has been Ehsan Mirdamadi of Codalio, and I am Anne Chang on behalf of the AI Partnerships Core, signing off.